So February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and while we get set to celebrate Valentine's Day, we thought it was important to talk about what abuse looks like and how to spot the signs. The statistics are shocking. Did you know that nationwide, 1 in 3 teens, 1 in 3 teenagers experience physical, sexual, or emotional abuse from someone they're in a relationship with, and that's before they even become adults. So what can we do and how can we stop the violence? Joining me now is Gina Lowe from Domestic Violence Services of Snohomish County. Gina, thank you for being here.
Hi, Amity. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so one of my first questions for you is, isn't it true that some gestures that can, seem romantic can actually be a form of abuse? And that a recent study found that over half of college students say they don't even know how to identify dating abuse?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of abusive behaviors are definitely normalized in a lot of the pop culture that I know. Particularly as a teen, I used to watch a lot of movies, like, for example, in The Notebook, where there were situations where Noah would send letters to Allie consistently, even though she never responded back. And that is actually, whenever that's not reciprocated, that could lead to stalking behaviors if no one respects those boundaries. So that's something that's really important to understand, is a lot of these types of behaviors and gestures are really promoted in our culture, and in that romantic culture particularly.
You know, that's a really, really good point, because you don't think about that. I mean, thinking about, some teen movies that are very popular with certain things like vampires and whatnot. But as parents, we educate our children on this from a very young age. It seems like culture kind of fights back against that education. But sadly, we know abuse can happen to anyone. So what are some of the signs?
Yeah, so there's so many different signs that you can look for. One big sign is seeing excessive texting a lot, especially right now during the pandemic. A lot of folks are interacting online, and that's a real sign when someone's constantly texting you when you're busy or during class. And that's a really big sign that someone doesn't respect your boundaries, or if someone doesn't respect no, or pressures you into, like, for example, kissing on the first date or holding hands when you don't feel like it. So those are some good early warning signs to look out for, to see, does this person respect my boundaries? As
parents, though, are there any signs we can look at for our children to make sure that they're, not being abused?
Yeah, definitely. I think one big thing to look for is a change in behavior. Like, is anything out of place? Is anything they're doing out of the ordinary? Are they isolating themselves from friends and family? That's a big sign, because a lot of times abusers try to isolate victims and survivors. So that's something to really look for, is to look if they're withdrawing from their friend groups and their family.
That's really good advice. Statistics show that some teens are at a higher risk than others. Let's talk about the disproportionate numbers when it comes to race.
Yeah, so Black teens are more likely to experience physical dating abuse and violence than their white and Latinx counterparts, according to a youth risk behavior survey. So one really important thing is to understand how we are underserving the Black community. And there's a lot of issues that are faced. For example, a lot of folks might not want to portray the Black community as a violent community. There's already a stereotype about that. So people are less likely to reach out for help. So that's something that we have to really understand, is that stigma. And also, what do institutions have to do to make people feel comfortable coming forward and believing survivors, particularly Black survivors, are more likely to be not believed by a lot of people, or not taken seriously. It's very similar in the medical field, where a lot of Black folks don't get the health care that they need, but it could be very similar in terms of domestic violence, dating violence. So that's something to really keep in mind.
And it's not just that, it's just so much of the culture, and technology seems to be against us all. Where can people go to find out more information, maybe tips on how to monitor your children's technology?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of great resources. For example, this week I'm actually hosting a workshop on digital boundaries, and that you can find that on our website. www.dvssnoco.org. And that is something that is really important to understand what technology is being used and what settings can help. You can have settings and what kind of digital boundaries do you have with your partner and things like that.
So key. Gina, thank you so much for being here this morning. We really, really appreciate all your insight. And remember, help is always out there, and we have a link to the resources at newdaynorthwest.com. Reach out if you need to. There is someone out there to help. We'll be right back. Stick around.